Hello, everybody. This is when um, the AI breach report and Frederick Cyber Security. This is the AI breach report for Wednesday 17th and Friday 19th June 2026. Uh, this week, the three most consequential security incidents all followed the same pattern. A vendor knew about a flaw in their platform. They sat on it for 6 weeks. When attackers found it first, they quietly patched it and buried the notification behind a paywall. Your enterprise data was at risk. You were not told. An open source supply chain attack that has now infected more than 25,000 GitHub repositories released its source code to the public. What was once a sophisticated campaign requiring rare expertise is now a toolkit that any threat actor can run. If your organization uses software built on open source components, and virtually everyone does, you are now in a larger blast radius than you were 30 days ago. And 15 plugins published to an official curated developer marketplace have been silently stealing AI provider credentials from developer workstations since October 2025. Close to 70,000 installations. 8 months, everyone passed manual review without detection. This is the AI breach report from Frederick Cybersecurity. I'm Frederick Wakliaka, founder of Frederick Cybersecurity, and this is your combined edition for Wednesday, 17th June and Friday, 19th June, 2026. This episode covers both editions in one sitting. The first half is the Wednesday incident report. The second half is the Friday defense brief. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe now. If you are listening on Spotify, I had some videos on Spotify. I'm going to start focusing after I finish. I'm now consolidating with Substack. I'm soon going to be able to do live videos from Substack. I'm getting there. That will be sorted within this week. So I'll be doing lives from Substack very soon. This intelligence publishes twice a week, every week, built for business owners and senior leaders, not technical specialists. Let us begin. Part 1, Wednesday, 17th June 2026, Incident Intelligence Edition. Chapter 1, ServiceNow, the vendor who knew and said nothing. The first story this week is not simply about a data breach. It is about a vendor that knew It's about a vendor that knew for 6 weeks that a door into your enterprise data was open and said nothing. ServiceNow is among the most widely deployed enterprise service management platforms in the world. Financial services firms use it to manage IT operations and compliance workflows. Professional services organizations use it to track projects and client delivery. Healthcare providers use it for clinical operations and staff management. If your organization uses ServiceNow, what I am about to describe is directly relevant to your business right now. On 5th June 2026, ServiceNow applied a security update addressing a flaw that allowed an unauthenticated user, someone with no login, no credentials, no prior access, to query the enterprise data stored in customer instances. The technical root cause was a scripted reset. The technical root cause was a scripted REST resource endpoint with its authentication requirements set to false. In plain terms, a door into your enterprise data was left unlocked by the vendor's own configuration, not by anything your team did wrong. Here is the timeline that every director needs to understand. On 22nd April 2026, a security researcher submitted a confidential bug bounty report to ServiceNow, describing this exact vulnerability. ServiceNow received that report. 6 weeks passed. During those 6 weeks, the door remained open. Confirmed malicious activity began on 2nd June 2026. ServiceNow patched on 5th June. The public advisory did not arrive until 9th June, and only customers with a paid support portal login could read it. The data stored in ServiceNow customer instances is not peripheral. IT service tickets contain internal system names, architecture details, and sensitive troubleshooting notes. Security incident records contain investigation steps and response playbooks. Employee records contain personal data subject to data protection regulation. Workflow automation contains credentials used to connect ServiceNow to the rest of your technology environment. And there is a second order concern that legal teams in financial services and healthcare organizations need to register immediately. Regulatory brief notification obligations begin their clock from the point at which an organization has determined or should have determined that a breach has occurred. A silent patch communicated only through a gated support bulletin does not provide that signal. And any organization that was affected and did not receive a direct notification from ServiceNow is in a position where their regulatory clock may have started running without their knowledge. The pattern here is not accidental. It is a structural feature of how enterprise software vendors manage security communications. The incentives are not aligned with yours. You need timely information to assess exposure and meet regulatory obligations. The vendor needs to manage its breach narrative. Those are different objectives. Chapter 2, Shai Hulud 2.0, the supply chain worm anyone can now deploy. The second story this week is about a supply chain attack that has been escalating since September 2025, and that took a structural turn in May 2026 that fundamentally changed the threat landscape for every organization that depends on software built from open source components. The Shai Hulud campaign began as a targeted attack on the NPM open source package registry. In September 2025, the original wave compromised more than 500 NPM packages and stole credentials from 487 organizations. Security researchers and law enforcement believed it was contained. It was not. Microsoft's security team and independent researchers have now confirmed that Shai-Hulud 2.0 has infected more than 25,000 GitHub repositories and has spread beyond NPM into the PyPI ecosystem. The Python package index used by data scientists, machine learning engineers, and the developers building the analytics infrastructure that medium enterprises increasingly depend on. Among the confirmed victims of the 2.0 wave are Zapier, PostHog, Postman, and Async API. These are not obscure tools. They are platforms used in enterprise operations every day. The change that makes this week's development particularly significant is this. In May 2026, the Shai-Hulud worm source code was released publicly. Before that release, executing a supply chain attack of this sophistication required a specific and rare combination of technical knowledge, access to developer ecosystems, and operational patience. After that release, it requires none of those things in the same measure. The worm is now a deployable toolkit. Any threat actor willing to operate at low complexity can run it. That transformation has direct consequences for every organization that depends on software built using open source components. The attack mechanism is straightforward. Attackers compromise the account of a trusted maintainer of a widely used open source package. They inject malicious code into a legitimate update. Organizations using that package receive the malicious code as part of what looks like a normal dependency update. The code executes within the development or deployment pipeline and can steal credentials, exfiltrate data, or establish persistent access within cloud environments. There is an additional dimension confirmed this week. A new variant tracked as Shai-Hulud 3.0 specifically targeted the Mastra NPM organization, which develops AI agent application frameworks. If your organization or your technology vendors are building applications using AI agent frameworks built on the NPM ecosystem, the supply chain risk surface has expanded to include that tooling. For medium enterprises, the business risk arrives through two channels. The first is direct. If your development teams use affected packages, your environment may be compromised. The second is indirect. If your technology suppliers, managed service providers, or software vendors use affected packages, the compromise reaches your data and operations without requiring any action on your part. The second channel is harder to detect. It is also the more common path. Chapter 3, JetBrains, 15 malicious plugins, 70,000 installs, your AI keys. The third story this week is one that every organization with a technology team needs to act on today. Aikido security researchers published findings on 17th June 2026 confirming a coordinated malware campaign involving at least 15 plugins established to the official JetBrains marketplace. JetBrains makes some of the most widely used development environments in the world: IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, WebStorm, Golang. If your technology team writes code, there is a significant probability they use JetBrains tools. The 15 malicious plugins posed as artificial intelligence coding assistants. They offered chat interfaces, automated code review, commit message generation, and bug identification, all built on well-known AI providers, including DeepSeek and others. The plugins delivered exactly what they advertised. They worked perfectly. They also silently stole the AI provider AI API keys that developers entered into their settings. The theft mechanism was precise and deliberate. When a developer installed one of the affected plugins and entered their API key for OpenAI, for DeepSeek, for SiliconFlow, the plugin performed two simultaneous actions. It stored the key locally as expected, and it transmitted the key in plain text over unencrypted HTTP to a hard-coded attacker-controlled server. There was no consent prompt, no notification, no visible indicator of any kind. The developer returned to their code editor. The key was already gone. The campaign has been active since October 2025. The most recent malicious variants were published as recently as 10th June 2026, 8 days before public disclosure. The plugins were published across 7 separate vendor accounts. Collectively, they accumulated close to 70,000 installations. 2 individual plugins, DeepSeek AI Assist and CodeGPT AI Assistant, each exceeded 25,000 downloads. Every one of them passed JetBrains' manual review process. The implications for medium enterprises extend beyond the individual developer whose key was stolen. An API key is not simply a password to a service. It is a credential to a capability. The ability to query a model with arbitrary inputs and receive outputs, potentially including sensitive business data. If your developers use AI coding assistants that have access to your code base, your internal documentation, or your proprietary data as context for their queries, the stolen key is a credential to all of that context. Aikido's research identified one further dimension that clarifies the attacker's business model. Some of the malicious plugins offered a paid tier. The researchers concluded that stolen API keys from unpaid users were being used to supply the AI model access sold to paying customers through the attacker's own service. In plain terms, this is not opportunistic credential theft. It is a commercial operation in which your developer's API keys are the product being sold. Chapter 4, Joomla JCE, a perfect severity flow being exploited right now. The fourth item this week is brief but urgent, particularly for organizations in healthcare and professional services. On 16th June 2026, CISA added CVE 2026-48907, a formally documented vulnerability carrying a severity score of 10.0 out of 7, the maximum possible, to its non-exploited vulnerabilities catalog. That catalog is reserved exclusively for flaws with confirmed active exploitation in the wild. Inclusion means attackers are using this against real targets right now. The affected component is the Joomla content editor, referred to as JCE, the most widely installed editor extension for the Joomla content management system. The vulnerability allows a completely unauthenticated remote attacker to upload and execute arbitrary code on the host server. No login required, no user interaction required. Attack complexity is rated low. If your organization's public-facing website, client portal, or knowledge base runs on Joomla with the JCE editor extension, it is actively exploitable right now. The patch is available in version 2.9.99.5, released 3rd June 2026. CISA ordered federal civilian agencies to patch by 19th June, that is Friday. Yesterday, private sector organizations are not bound by that deadline, but should treat it as the outer limit of acceptable risk tolerance, not a ceiling. If you run Joomla, patch it today. Part 2, Friday, 19th June 2026. Defense brief. What to do this weekend. This half of the episode does not retell Wednesday's incidents. It tells you exactly what to do about them. If you have watched the first half, you understand the threats. Now I'm going to give you the specific actions in order of urgency that will close the most critical gaps before Monday morning. Chapter 5, ServiceNow, what affected organizations must do. About ServiceNow. ServiceNow remediation requires answering 4 questions in this sequence. The first question, was your instance on the Australia platform release, or had your team made configuration changes to an older release that enabled the same vulnerable state? ServiceNow has confirmed these are the primary affected configurations. If you do not know the answer, contact ServiceNow support directly today and ask them to confirm your instance configuration as it stood during the incidents window 2nd to 5th June 2026. The second question, was your instance accessed by the attacker? The confirmed attacker IP address is 51.159.98.241. Your IT or security team must search firewall logs, web application firewall records, and ServiceNow transaction logs for any traffic from that address during the period 1st to 10th June 2026. If your logs do not extend that far back, that absence is itself a governance finding that requires attention. The third question, and the most operationally urgent, concerns credentials. ServiceNow instances routinely contain IT support tickets in which employees share passwords, multi-factor authentication recovery codes, API keys, VPN credentials, and network configuration details during the course of seeking technical help. This is not exceptional behavior. It is standard practice. Every credential of this type that appeared in a ticket accessible before 5th June must be treated as potentially compromised and rotated. Service account passwords, OAuth secrets, API tokens, VPN credentials. Do not wait for ServiceNow to confirm your specific data was accessed. Rotate fast. The fourth question is regulatory. For organizations subject to UK GDPR, a personal Data breach triggers a 72-hour notification obligation a 72-hour notification obligation to the Information Commissioner's Office from the moment you have determined or should have determined that breach occurred. The 4-day gap between ServiceNow's patch and its advisory, combined with the access requirement that gated the notification behind a paid login, will receive regulatory scrutiny. Document your timeline now. If you are uncertain whether a personal data breach occurred, your data protection officer or legal counsel must make that assessment today. Finally, audit your scripted REST API configuration within ServiceNow. Navigate to System Web Services, then Scripted REST APIs, and review every resource definition. For each endpoint, confirm that the requires authentication field is set to true. Disable any endpoint that cannot be operationally justified. Retain that audit as documented evidence of your governance response. Chapter 6, Shai Hulud governing your development pipeline. The Shai Hulud supply chain defense requires 4 controls implemented in parallel. None of them require significant budget. All of them require a deliberate decision to act. The first control is log file integrity. In NPM, this means using package-lock.json or yarn.log files that pin every dependency to an exact resolved version combined with the pipeline setup that fails to the build if the log file has changed without a corresponding deliberate update. This single control significantly reduces the window in which a newly compromised package version can enter your environment without detection. The second control is software composition analysis. Tools from SNYK, SNYK, JFrog, Sonatype, and GitHub Advanced Security scan your dependency tree at build time and alert or block when a compromised package version is detected. Several of these tools now carry specific detection signatures for the Shai Hulud campaign family and its Miasma variant. If you do not currently run software composition analysis in your build pipeline, this week is the moment to introduce it. The third control addresses the most serious long-term exposure, the developer workstation. When a developer machine executes the pre-install phase of a malicious NPM package, the malicious code runs with the developer's local permissions before any security check can intervene. From that point, the worm can harvest NPM tokens, GitHub personal access tokens, cloud provider credentials, and any secrets stored in local environment files. The developer machine is frequently the gateway to source code repositories, cloud environments, production systems, and customer data. Every developer workstation must be subject to the same endpoint security controls as your servers. The fourth control is CI/CD pipeline hardening. Continuous integration requirements frequently run with elevated permissions that allow them to build, test, and deploy to production. If a malicious package executes during a CI run, those permissions are exposed. Implement least privilege in your build environment. CI runners should hold only the credentials required for the specific build. Credentials should be short-lived where possible, and pipeline audit logs should be reviewed for anomalous behavior. For organizations that use technology vendors or software agencies rather than an in-house development team, and that describes the majority of medium enterprises, the same controls apply. The governance mechanism is contractual. Your vendor agreement should require software composition analysis, log file integrity enforcement, and an auditable software bill of materials for any software delivered to your environment. If your current agreements do not include those provisions, add them at the next renewal. Chapter 7, JetBrains. The credential rotation window is now. JetBrains confirmed on 17th June that it had removed all 15 malicious plugins JetBrains that it had removed all 15 malicious plugins from the marketplace and disabled them remotely in installed IDEs. That action closed the distribution channel. It did not protect any developer who installed an affected plugin before 17th June and has not yet rotated their credentials. That window is open right now. The first step is a plugin audit. In any JetBrains IDE, IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, Goland, WebStorm, Rider, CLion, navigate to Settings, then Plugins, then Installed. Cross-reference the installed list against the 15 plugin names documented in JetBrains official security notice dated June 17, 2026. The two most downloaded entries were DeepSeek AI Assist with approximately 27,000 installs and Code GPT AI Assistant with approximately 25,500 installs. All 15 shared nearly identical malicious code under different branding. The second step is a network log search. Your firewall or web application firewall should carry a record of any outbound connections to IP address 39.107.60.59. Additionally, search for the URI patterns /API/software/key and /API/software/check in any proxy or network traffic logs covering October 2025 through 17th June 2026. Any match confirms a credential was transmitted. The third step is mandatory credential rotation for any developer who installed an affected plugin. Do not simply create a new key. Explicitly revoke the compromised key first through the relevant AI providers console, OpenAI at platform.openai.com, DeepSeek and SiliconFlow at their respective developer consoles. Revocation before replacement is the critical step. A key that has been transmitted to an attacker's server must be revoked regardless of whether it has been actively abused. The abuse window extends from the date of installation to this moment. The fourth step is a usage log audit. Check your AI provider account dashboards for request volume anomalies, unusual geographic origin of API calls, or quota depletion since October 2025. Any anomaly is a potential ongoing credential abuse incident and should be escalated accordingly. Chapter 8, CISA BOD 2604, the patching framework you should adapt now. On 10th June 2026, CISA issued Binding Operational Directive 26-04 titled Prioritizing Security Updates Based on Risk. The directive formally binds U.S. federal civilian agencies. It does not directly bind UK medium enterprises. It is, however, the most operationally useful vulnerability management framework produced by any major regulatory authority in 2026. And the four-factor risk matrix at its core should be adopted as internal policy by any organization serious about closing the gap between vulnerability, disclosure, and exploitation. The directive replaces calendar-based patching, under which all vulnerabilities were addressed within fixed windows, regardless of actual risk, with a four-factor matrix that determines how urgently each vulnerability requires action. The four factors are asset exposure, whether the affected system is publicly accessible from the internet, non-exploitation, whether the vulnerability appears in CISA's non-exploited vulnerabilities catalog as confirmed to be actively exploited in the wild. Exploit automation, whether an attacker can write a script that executes the exploit reliably at scale, and post-exploitation impact, the degree of control an attacker achieves after successful exploitation, ranging from limited data read access to complete system control. Vulnerabilities that score positively on all four factors: publicly exposed, actively exploited, automatable, and delivering complete system control, must be remediated within 3 days under the directive, including a forensic triage step to check whether the vulnerability was already exploited before the patch was applied. This 3-day requirement acknowledges explicitly what the directive calls AI accelerated exploitation. AI tools can assist threat actors in finding and exploiting vulnerabilities faster than defenders operating on traditional patch cycles can respond. The Joomla JCE vulnerability this week scores positively on all four factors. So did the Vim vulnerability from the week of 9th June. The framework would have directed immediate action on both. Calendar-based patching would not. For medium enterprises, the value of this framework is that it converts vulnerability management from a volume problem into a prioritization problem. Most medium enterprises do not have the IT resource to patch every disclosed vulnerability on an aggressive timeline. The BOD 2604 matrix provides a defensible regulatorily recognized method for directing limited resource toward the vulnerabilities that most urgently demand it. Document the matrix, apply it to every disclosure that affects your environment, retain the risk decisions as evidence of a structured approach. The Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, currently moving through the UK Parliament, requires documented evidence of structured security governance. The BOD 2604 framework, applied consistently and documented, provides precisely that evidence. Weekly action summary. Before I close, 5 actions. These are the minimum this week requires. 1, if your organization uses ServiceNow, contact your account team today and request written confirmation that your instance was patched, that it was not among those queried, and that ServiceNow has completed its investigation into your data. Initiate credential rotation for any sensitive credentials that appeared in IT support tickets before 5th June. 2, require your technology team or technology vendor to produce a software bill of materials, a full inventory of the open source NPM and Python packages used in any software your organization operates. Check that inventory against the Shai-Hulud 2.0 indicators of compromise published by Microsoft's security team. If your vendor cannot produce this, that absence is the answer you needed. 3, require every developer in your organization who uses JetBrains tools to complete a plugin audit and rotate their AI provider API keys today. Revoke first, replace second. This action takes 15 minutes per person and closes an exposure that has been open since October 2025. 4, adapt the CISA BOD 2604 4-factor risk matrix as your internal vulnerability prioritization standard. Brief your IT lead on the framework this week. Document that briefing When the next disclosure arrives, and it will arrive within days, you will have a structured basis for deciding how urgently to act. 5. Review your enterprise software vendor notification process. Identify the 5 or 6 platforms your organization depends on most critically. Establish a monitoring cadence that checks their security advisory pages weekly, cross-references their products against the CISA KEV catalog, and does not rely on vendor-initiated notification as the primary signal. The pattern across all of this week's incidents is the same. Trusted platforms, trusted processes, trusted tools, weaponized from within. The adversary is not breaking through your perimeter. They are walking through the doors that others left open. Closing these doors is not a technical project, it is a governance decision, and it starts with the actions I have just described. This is the AI Breach Report for the week of 17th and 19th June 2026. If you found this useful, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Substack. Spotify is coming after Substack. Let me first sort out Substack. Share it with the business owner or operations lead who needs to understand what is happening in the AI security landscape. The next edition publishes on Wednesday, 25th June. I'm Frederick Wakliaka from Frederick Cybersecurity. Stay informed, stay protected. Thank you for listening.